Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Stolen Sorcery and Other Misadventures by Annette Marie and Rob Jacobson. Narrated by Iggy Toma. Chapter 1. Shit's about to go down. Beside me, Vincent Park nodded in terse agreement. It had been a while since we'd shared a cubicle, but he'd borrowed Lienna's empty chair without even asking first. I hadn't complained. My cubicle offered a better angle for spying on the rest of the bullpen than his did. "She's not actually going to do it, is she?" Vinny whispered. "No one is that stupid." I shook my head. "I wouldn't call it stupid. Desperate, maybe. Angry, definitely. But she isn't stupid." At the front of the bullpen, Agent Clarice Vigneault stood with her arms crossed, tapping her foot against the floor like an electrocuted Michael Flatley. Her tightly curled black hair vibrated in harmony with her spastic foot, and her eyes, normally soft and welcoming, were fixated on one of the bullpen's 3 entrances with an air of furious expectation. Everyone else surreptitiously watched her with the same doomsday outlook as me. The atmosphere in the precinct had been toxically tense since Söze had shown his extra ugly usurper side. And in the wake of recent events, the levels of paranoia, defensiveness, and I don't get paid enough for this bullshit had climbed so high they were out of orbit. I should stop her, I mumbled, sliding away from my hiding spot behind the cubicle wall. Distract her or something. Vinny caught my sleeve and tugged me back. "You want to tell a senior agent what to do?" "I want to make sure a good agent doesn't make a career-ending decision because she's rightfully pissed off." "Don't exaggerate. It won't be career-ending," Vinny said with his usual smug confidence. But he couldn't hide the worried crease between his brows. He was concerned for Agent Vigneault, too. Honestly, Vinny wasn't that bad. The enemy of my enemy is my friend and all that. Plus, Vincent Park had proven himself beyond my ability to doubt him. A highly acute ability, I might add. When it had really counted, he fought on the side of justice, and that made his know-it-all, ass-kissing swagger a little more bearable. I still didn't like him. That was impossible. Like liver-flavored ice cream. Who could ever like that? But I could tolerate him. Caught between the urge to divert Agent Vigneault and Vinny's insistent pull on my sleeve, I hesitated for a minute too long. The bullpen door swung open and the bane of the precinct's existence walked through. Agent Söze, Internal Affairs. I didn't know his first name. I didn't care to learn it. All I needed to know was that he was the slimiest blend of evil and insidious. He was totally cool with all means of villainy as long as he could disguise it as MPD-approved justice. And he had totalitarian control of the precinct and all its agents. If it seems like I'm exaggerating his winning qualities, may I present Case Study A. Around 1 week ago, he resurrected an ancient MPD provision to sanction the annihilation of an entire guild. He failed, barely, but the fact that he was fine with the mass murder of innocents is indisputable. That, and he has it out for the Crow and Hammer for reasons unknown. Following him into the bullpen was one of his interchangeable cronies that he'd called in to support his hostile takeover of our precinct. Today's IA goon was Agent Cade, a strong and silent type in his early 40s with a linebacker's shoulders, perpetual stubble, and Bruce Willis's haircut. He'd been introduced to us as a sorcerer, but he looked like he relied on his fists as much as his magic. Agent Vigneault swooped toward Söze the moment he appeared. "Agent Söze, I demand an explanation." I winced at her aggressive tone. This definitely wouldn't go well for her. "What is the problem, Agent?" Söze asked neutrally. He didn't lower his voice for the same reason he'd shown up in the bullpen instead of meeting with Agent Vigneault in private. He intended to make this a public display. Did Agent Vigneault realize that? Or was she too angry to care? "You destroyed a 6-month-long investigation," she half-shouted. "My team and I were weeks away from bringing down an entire chain of criminal activity." The usual ruckus of the bullpen dropped dramatically as every agent pretended not to watch the blooming spectacle. We all knew about the underground network of criminals running illegal bounties in Vancouver that she'd been slowly but surely unraveling, until Söze had pulled the plug earlier this morning. The whole illegal bounty system has a single linchpin, one individual acting as bank and broker, Agent Vigneault seethed. We knew from our informant that the linchpin keeps records on every single user, both clients and assassins. Taking him down will net us evidence for dozens or even hundreds of crimes. Söze gazed at her like she was a particularly dumb-looking dog drooling on his carpet. Your aspirations are quite grand for a case based entirely on the baseless claims of an untrustworthy informant. You've not only wasted 6 months of your own time, but also monopolized an entire team on this wild goose chase. Wild goose? She broke off into furious splutters. It was strange to see Agent Vigneault, who generally had the temperament of a kindergarten teacher on Xanax, lose her head like this. Söze did that to people. I took control of this precinct with one clear mandate, he said, a sneer creeping into his dead voice. To root out inefficiency, incompetence, and corruption among the agents here. My subordinates are in the process of determining which of those sins applies to your investigation, Agent Vigneault. Are you kidding me? Vigneault's hands clenched into fists. This is crazy. You're deliberately blocking my investigation, aren't you? Why? Söze's dark eyes narrowed. Are you questioning my integrity, Agent Vigneault? You're damn right I am, she shot back, stepping within inches of his face, her voice dropping into a growl. I'm questioning your integrity, I'm questioning your ethics, and I'm questioning your sanity. Oh, shit, Vinny muttered. That sounds an awful lot like insubordination, Söze observed. He looked over his shoulder at his bald-headed goon. Agent Cade, take Agent Vigneault into custody. Agent Vigneault recoiled, anger instantly replaced by shock. Are you arresting me? Söze's lips curled into a faint, slimy smile. Are you resisting arrest? Agent Cade produced a pair of handcuffs and slapped them on Vigneault's wrists. She didn't resist, too stunned to do anything about it. The bullpen was so quiet that the metal clicks of the cuffs ratcheting shut rang through the space. Ever since Söze had taken control of our precinct, every agent had been a wee bit high-strung. Even the agents who supported Söze, not that anyone talked openly about that kind of thing, hadn't been particularly chill. But at this moment, everyone's blood pressure was hitting a new level of intensity, which I suspected had been Söze's plan. I'll give you time in holding to reconsider your stance on your terminated investigation. Though ostensibly speaking to Vigneault, Söze was addressing all of us. If we can't reach an understanding, I will personally dissect every case you have ever touched. I will dismantle your job history, your personal history, and your family's history, until every mistake, every defect, and every sin are laid bare. Do you understand me? Holy, totalitarian shit. Vigneault didn't respond, her jaw clenched tight. Söze nodded curtly to Cade, who guided the cuffed agent toward the door leading to the elevator, and from there the holding cells. As they left, I spotted Captain Blythe leaning against the wall beside the lobby doors, her arms crossed in all her stern-tastic glory. She'd witnessed the whole spectacle, but like us, she was helpless to do anything about it. Söze surveyed the bullpen like a ruling lord observing his cowering, subservient vassals, nodded in a satisfied way, and disappeared as ominously as he'd arrived. A low, wary buzz of conversation spread through the bullpen in his absence. I slumped back in my chair, exhausted by yet another moral defeat. Vinny puffed out an unsteady breath. Though the ordeal was over, he didn't vacate my partner's chair. What's going to happen? He asked in an undertone. I shook my head. I didn't know any better than he did. The future of our precinct was about as clear as muddy waters churned up by a piranha-feeding frenzy. I suppose we should get back to work before Söze decides that slacking is a capital crime. Reluctantly sitting up again, I glanced at Vinny. What are you working on these days? He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. Odds and ends, mostly. Not a very Vinny-ish response. Normally, he'd have bragged about the high-profile cases he was tackling alongside experienced senior agent Brennan Harris. Vinny had started at the MPD around the same time as me, and at that point he'd worn cargo shorts to work every single day. However, ever since he'd partnered up with his idol, his wardrobe had taken a hard shift toward the formal black and whites that senior agents like Harris favored. Some would say going from cargo shorts to a suit is an upgrade. I consider it a lateral move. Fashion evolution aside, Vinny should have been following Harris around like a mohawked Labrador puppy. But Agent Vigneault wasn't the only one who'd run afoul of Söze. The IA asshole had paired Harris with one of his own lackeys to punish Vinny, leaving the rookie agent high, dry, and partnerless. I actually felt bad for him. Shocking, I know, but the anti-Söze team needed to stick together. Vincent tapped a finger restlessly on Lienna's desk, then leaned toward me. I talked to Agent Harris earlier this morning. Söze assigned him to investigate the death of a GM. My eyebrows shot up. Guildmasters were hotshots in the mythic community, and a sudden death among their ranks was something the MPD always took seriously. Did Harris say which GM? I asked. Georgia Johansson of Arcana Historia. I swore under my breath. I'd visited that guild a few times, though I'd never met the GM. The librarian found her dead inside the guild this morning, Vinny said. The thing is, while Agent Harris was talking to me, Agent Söze passed by. When he realized what we were discussing, he snapped at Agent Harris to keep confidential case details to himself. Confidential? I repeated with a frown. A case involving a GM's death isn't automatically classified. Yeah, exactly. I thought for a moment, then shoved my chair back. Come on. Captain Blythe was still loitering around the perimeter of the bullpen, unsurprisingly since Söze had stripped away most of her duties, and her eyebrows arched questioningly as Vincent and I approached. Hey, Cap, Vinny just told me something interesting. I waved at him to speak. He shifted uncomfortably, puffed out his cheeks, then repeated what he'd told me. Blythe's expression went stonier with each word. I hadn't heard a word about this, she said flatly. Söze must have suppressed the information. Definitely, I agreed. The whole bullpen would know by now otherwise. The captain's lips thinned as she thought. Agent Morris, I want you and Agent Shen at Arcana Historia immediately. I don't think Söze will appreciate us inviting ourselves to a possible crime scene. I don't give a shit what Agent Söze appreciates. He's keeping this quiet for a reason, and I want to know why. Do you understand what I'm saying, Agent Morris? I gave a small nod, loud and clear. What about me? Asked Vinny, staring expectantly at our boss. Blythe considered his question. I need you to keep your head down and your lines of communication with Agent Harris open. Vinny absorbed that with a defeated slump to his shoulders. He didn't like the idea of tapping his idol for information on the enemy. But to my surprise, he responded with a firm, yes, ma'am. The captain scanned the bullpen. Where is Agent Shen? She's supposed to be on duty. I'll find her, I answered, and whisk her away to the magical land of suspicious GM deaths and douchebag IA agents. See that you do. Vinny and I split as we returned to our respective cubicles. I locked my computer, grabbed my black denim jacket off the back of my chair, and headed straight for the elevator. I didn't need to find Agent Lienna Shen. I knew exactly where she was. She was hiding. Chapter 2. I wasn't hiding. Oh, please, I said as Lienna and I got off the elevator and stepped into the parking garage. You literally ducked behind a cardboard box when I walked in. My partner's casual appearance, hooded jacket and jeans with her trusty satchel slung over one shoulder, beads woven into her long dark hair and bracelets clacking whimsically with every step, was at odds with her tense demeanor. Her shoulders were stiff, and the subtle, playful glint in her eyes that I loved was notably absent. It wasn't even a big box, I teased, hoping to elicit one of her patented eye rolls. You must have been terrible at hide-and-go-seek as a child. I dropped something. She stepped around to the driver's side of our luxurious 4-door smart car. I was picking it up, that's all. We both got into the micromobile. With its extra pair of doors, it was pretending to be a lot bigger than it was. Lienna and I had seen a couple of our previous 2-door models destroyed, one via a bomb and the other thanks to a demon's temper tantrum, and I had little faith that the extra cab space would prevent me from eating my own shin bones in a head-on collision. Dropped what? I inquired as my partner guided the smart car up the parking garage ramp and out into the damp, chilly weather. Your shift schedule? We were supposed to start working on that Sea Devils report yesterday. Are we really going to do that bullshit report? Calling our report on the Sea Devils Guild bullshit was demeaning to the fecal matter of a bovine male, which was actually useful in certain circumstances. It could be used for fertilizer. The Sea Devils Guild was another item on Söze's "You offended me and now you will pay" to-do list. They played a role in preventing the outright obliteration of the Crow and Hammer last week, and Söze had really wanted to obliterate them. Thus, the authoritarian IA asshole had opened an investigation into the legality of every action the Guild had ever taken over the course of its extended history. It was a paper-pushing witch hunt that would take months, and Söze had assigned it to us as a bureaucratic middle finger for our role in saving the Crow and Hammer. I wasn't thrilled with the idea of screwing over a guild that I would generally consider to be on the good guy end of the spectrum, but for the sake of appearances, I'd been fake working alone at my cubicle for the past 3 days. Meanwhile, Lienna had been holed up in the archives, avoiding most forms of human and/or mythic contact. No, I answered, but you could help me pretend to do the report? For all you know, she said in an attempt at lighthearted indignation, that's exactly what I'm doing in the archives. Or, I countered with a wave of my finger, could your new avoidance strategy have something to do with the portals Söze and his goon squad stole from your top-secret subterranean lab? Her humor melted away. It's been days, Kit, and we haven't heard the ittiest-bittiest peep about portals from Söze or any of the IA sycophants who follow him around. I adjusted my legs to avoid a muscle cramp. Do you think hiding in the archives will make him forget about you? Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. I expected him to turn over the portals as evidence of me practicing illegal magic. The fact that he hasn't worries me. That worries you? I would have thought the power-tripping lunatic who hates us more than Indiana Jones hates snakes not tossing you in the clink would be a relief. I don't want to be arrested, but if Söze isn't using the portals as evidence, that must mean he wants to keep their existence a secret. Because he's going to use them. She nodded. But for what? Silence enveloped the car's cramped interior as we mulled over all the horrible, likely creepy shit Söze could do with a set of portals and his slimy paws. I found something in the archives, she said suddenly. It's in my bag. I grabbed her satchel off the center console and opened it up. Inside was the usual menagerie of deadly artifacts. Her wooden Rubik's Cube, stun marbles, the temperamental wooden knife that could immobilize anyone the user targeted or the user themselves, as well as a thin manila folder. I pulled it out. This? Yeah. I flipped the folder open, fully expecting something that would either illuminate or complicate our current set of insurmountable problems. Instead, I found myself frowning at a photocopied file from 1927? I scanned the dark smudge text that had been hammered out on a typewriter before the Second World War. Mythic of Public Note, I read aloud. My gaze moved down the name beneath that title, and my jaw dropped. Lon Chaney? Lienna smiled. Yep. This guy's a legend. He was the greatest silent film actor of his time, the man of 1,000 faces. He was the Phantom of the Opera, Quasimodo, Fagin and Oliver Twist? I pored over the document. Why does the MPD have a file on him? Why do you think? No way. He was a mythic? She nodded. He doesn't say what type exactly, but Mr. Chaney uses his robust magical capabilities to get inside the minds of the tortured characters he portrays. Sounds like Psychica. That is so cool. I reluctantly looked up from the document. Is this part of a case you're working on? She shrugged, her eyes on the road. I just thought you'd find it interesting. Damn right. I already had my nose back in the file, curiosity burning through every fiber of my cinephile being. Chaney had been notoriously private, and I was dying to see what the MPD of times past had known about his secretive life. I only closed the file when Lienna pulled up to a stop on the narrow street where Arcana Historia awaited us. The architecture of the building resembled an unimaginative gray brick, rectangular and bland. Lienna parked the smart car out front behind two other MPD vehicles, and we entered through the front door. Inside was an empty reception desk for a private tutoring service, the Guild's public front. We pushed through the frosted glass doors to one side of the small lobby, past a display case of ancient grimoires, and went through another unlocked door to enter the heart of the Guild, an expansive library filled with books on magic, potions, spells, mythic history, and anything else a supernaturally inclined bookworm could hope to lay eyes on. I expected to find a parade of Söze's hand-picked agents and a dead body, but I saw only one person, an elderly lady with a mound of gray curls atop her head, sitting at one of the tables in the middle of the library. Her red-rimmed eyes stared blankly ahead as she sniffled. Lienna made a beeline for the older woman. Edith? Agent Shen, she greeted weakly. Are you here for? Lienna lowered herself into the chair next to Edith. I'm so sorry. How are you holding up? She seemed completely fine last night. We talked about updating the Spiritalis catalog. Edith took a shaky breath. I've worked with Georgia for almost 15 years, and now I can't believe it. Fresh tears wet her eyes, and Lienna gently took hold of her hand, silently consoling her. I stood a respectful distance away, leaning against the end of a bookshelf. I'd been to Arcana Historia a few times, but Lienna frequented the library. She must have befriended some of the librarians during her visits, including Edith. Has anyone spoken to you yet? Lienna asked after a quiet moment. Any of the agents? Edith shook her head. Not after I showed her after I took her to Georgia. Her? I asked. Agent Harris was many things, but not likely to be mistaken for a woman. An agent. Strong-looking woman in a gray suit. That sounded like Agent Suarez, one of Söze's lackeys. I'd seen a second MPD vehicle outside, but I'd been hoping it belonged to literally any MPD employee besides a Söze loyalist. There's another agent as well, Edith added. He arrived a few minutes afterward and introduced himself. Agent Harris, he said. He's going to speak with me after he examines the scene. Where are they now? Lienna asked. In the lazaretto. I frowned. In the what? That was a word I'd never heard before. It sounded fancy. Lienna seemed to know exactly what a lazaretto was. Is that where Georgia is? The librarian nodded. I thought I was the first one here this morning because I usually open the library on Wednesdays, but... Do you know why Georgia was in the lazaretto? Lienna asked, still holding Edith's hand. She sometimes stayed late to examine the new arrivals, Edith answered. It wasn't unusual. She preferred to do it after the library closed because of the sensitive nature of the books. More privacy. My interest in this place spiked. What books of a sensitive nature was Arcana Historia hiding? Was Georgia here last night when you left? At Edith's nod, Lienna looked around the expansive room. Did you notice anything out of place this morning? No. Everything was normal. I disarmed the security system and made a cup of tea. It was only when I went to see if Georgia had left me any work in the lazaretto. I unlocked the door and... that's when I found her. Edith broke into quiet sobs. Lienna put an arm around her shoulders, giving her a soft squeeze. It was strange to see my partner, who'd once threatened to reconfigure my bowels into a rough approximation of Stonehenge, offering such tender comfort. I already knew there were more sides to Lienna Shen than I'd seen, and this reinforced that knowledge. "Agent Morse and I are going to talk to the other agents," she told Edith. "We'll check in on you soon." "One more question," I jumped in, pitching my voice to be low and soothing. "Just a quick one. You said you disarmed the security system. Had it been armed all night?" "Yes." She wiped at her eyes with a crumpled tissue. "It didn't record any activity. It wasn't disarmed by anything else. None of the exterior doors were unlocked. Nothing. Georgia didn't go home last night." I nodded. Since Georgia hadn't left, it was unlikely anyone had entered the building either. Lienna gave the old woman another comforting squeeze, then beckoned me to follow her through the stacks of books. "The lazaretto?" I whispered as I fell into step beside her. "What is that?" "A locked room where the library keeps all books that might be too dangerous to be put on the shelves." "Too dangerous?" "Books that contain illegal magic, mostly. Usually seized during raids or black market stings. If the book is deemed safe, it can go out on the shelf. If not, it's either quarantined or destroyed. Georgia Johansson was one of only a few mythics in the city certified by the MPD to make those decisions." "Dangerous, illegal books," I reiterated. "Do you think she was murdered over a wildly lethal spell manual or something?" "We don't even know if she was murdered. I didn't want to ask Edith about the manner of death." Lienna guided me through another row of books into a short hallway and stopped at a door with a Guild Members Only plaque. She swung it open. The interior of the lazaretto was strangely similar to what I'd imagined. Dusty piles of books in various states of disrepair were stacked across a long table pushed up against the wall, and a row of locked cabinets lined the opposite wall. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed above us, casting painfully bright light over the room. Agent Harris stood near the table, blue latex gloves starkly contrasting with his starched black and white attire as he took notes. Directly in front of him was Georgia Johansson. She was on her knees, leaning forward at an angle that would have landed her face first on the floor if it hadn't been for the length of rope wrapped around her neck, the other end tied to the locked cabinet behind her. Harris looked up, displeased by our unexpected presence. "What are you two doing here?" Lienna stepped boldly into the room. "We're here to help with the investigation." Her statement was so matter-of-fact that Agent Harris didn't even question it. He merely frowned and looked back down at his notes. "There isn't much to investigate. As you can see, it appears to be a suicide." "Where's Agent Suarez?" I asked. He shrugged. "She was here when I arrived, but left shortly after." I gave Lienna a side-eyed look. She raised her eyebrows. Why would Suarez show up only to leave without participating in the investigation? Lienna took out her phone and aimed it around the lazaretto, snapping a series of photos, while I got a better look at the body. Sorrow trickled through me. I hadn't known Georgia, but her death would leave a mark on many lives. GMs were integral figures in the lives of their guildeds and local mythic communities. She would be missed. "There's no sign of a struggle," Harris said in a monotone. "No apparent injuries to the victim other than those associated with hanging. No signs of forced entry into the room." Lienna made a thoughtful noise, focused on her photo-taking quest. I turned to the assortment of illegal books on the table, most of which were in languages I couldn't read. Georgia had taken great care with them, except for one. It looked like someone had used a live grenade as a bookmark. The pages were crumpled, if not shredded, and the spine was bent in a way that would make a casual perusal of its illicit secrets next to impossible. Wedged underneath the beat-up book was a familiar clear plastic bag with a zip top, an MPD evidence bag. "Lienna," I murmured, waving at her to join me. She peered at the torn book and MPD bag. "Evidence from a case. That's pretty standard. Any unknown books considered suspicious are bagged and sent here for examination. As she nudged the book aside to get...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?